Boop 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 boo. Boop 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 boo. All right. So what? So what? We're here. The last thing we saw, last thing we went through was Sam saying, okay, that Ethan says that the first dozen marches in the Great March of Return of 2018 and 2019 had people attacking the fence. Now, Ethan seems to think this is some kind of criticism against Palestinians and some sort of justification for the fucking atrocities that befell them at the hands of Israeli soldiers. Even if it were true, it doesn't excuse it. So, and it's not true. But even if it's true, attacking the fences does not warrant them even being where they were in the first place. There shouldn't have been a wall. There shouldn't have been a fence in the first place. And they're right to tear it the fuck down. And even if they weren't right to tear it down, you can't just kill innocent people, disabled people, children, just purposely crippling people, aiming for the knees. Like, even if it was totally like wrong to break that fence, you weren't only shooting the people that were attacking the fence. You were shooting a lot of other people. So it's a dumb fucking point. Ethan's like, correct. And Sam just says, okay. And so Ethan probably feels like he won that one. Ha ha ha. They attacked the fence. Got him. Got your ass. Woo. All right. So we're continuing with Ethan. He says, I think there's a way for Israel to try. He doesn't finish that thought. I think they can pursue peace. The way that they're doing it is impossible. It's insane. It's genocidal. It's horrific. That's Ethan Klein saying all those things. This is part of why Ethan is so I guess frustrating as a if you accept this, and then, but just before you said all this, you're trying to minimize the attack on the Great March of Return. You're trying to blame Hamas for asking for it. That's Ethan's position. Is Hamas are like freaky backwards people who love hatred and hate love. They want pain and they hate comfort and security. They love starvation and they hate ample food. And they're actually kind of basically forcing the Israelis to do these atrocities because they're just asking for it so hard. They're like, please starve our people. That's what we want you to do. That's Ethan's sort of view of what Hamas, their intentions are. So it's completely bonkers. Sam told him that that's absurd, and kind of left it at that. Ethan just sort of he just restates it a couple other times in so many words. And then the very next sentence, this very next thing, is, oh yeah, they're insane, they're genocidal, they're horrific. So in response to him saying, I think they can pursue peace, Sam says they're not pursuing peace. Ethan, I'm not saying that. I'm saying the opposite. I don't think Israel's pursuing peace. Obviously, they're not pursuing peace. I agree with you. There could have been a path, although their response was inevitable based on everything that happened. Their response was inevitable based on everything that happened. So Ethan's arguing that Israel's response was inevitable based on everything that happened. So I guess he's including attacking the fence along with October 7th. You think it was inevitable that they would kill this many people, use food and supplies as a weapon, have leveled hospitals and universities in 80 to 90% of the homes? I don't know to what extent, but a huge response was definitely inevitable. What? I'm not justifying it. You asked me a question. I'm answering it. You're putting this on me. Sam, no, inevitability. I wonder what you must think of an Israeli body politic where this level of atrocity is inevitable. You described yours and Hamas's understanding of the IDF. I can't say to what extent, but if you agree that a huge response was inevitable. I believe a response was inevitable by Israel. That is because I have a much more theoretically jaded view of Israel and their agenda. To expect that what they have done is inevitable? Very few. I just wonder what it is you think is in that body politic. Very few. I don't think it's inevitable. An example in this country. I don't think that it's inevitable that we are going to be deporting and disappearing immigrants in this country. I think it's possible. My perspective on America is still too optimistic to think that that's inevitable. I can't even imagine what I would think would be inevitable. Our invasion of Iraq and the complete lack of caring, the only thing that would even mitigate that is like there was very few images coming out of Iraq. I was exposing them more than the American population at large. But to perceive what we did in Iraq is inevitable, it's a different situation. I think Ethan says it's a different situation. It's a different situation. That was completely unpredictable. To what end this even matters? It doesn't ultimately. So Ethan throws in another, this doesn't matter. Hamas knew that they were going to bomb the shit out of Gaza. Sam, I would imagine Hamas thought that there was going to be a response, but they wouldn't have taken hostages if they thought that they couldn't use them to deter Israel from entering. Ethan, of course they thought they could. I don't deny that. Of course they thought they could. It seems like Ethan is answering a different question. Or responding in a different way. Because he says, I'd imagine Hamas thought there was going to be a response. But they would not have taken hostages if they thought they couldn't use them later. Use them as deterrents. Of course they thought they could. Hamas thought they could what? Because he says they wouldn't have taken off if they thought they couldn't. Or is he saying Hamas thought they could use hostages to deter Israel? That would probably make more sense. All right, Sam continues. That was a miscalculation on their part. They presumed that Israel would be more interested in the hostages. Ethan responds, that's part of what a lot of the civil unrest in Israel is about. A lot of people do care about the hostages and think that the government needs to stop the war and focus on getting the hostages back and not killing innocent civilians. I wonder about that last part. Which part? The part about killing innocent civilians. I said that's what they're doing. No, I'm saying I wonder if the Israeli body politic... Ethan, you think the Israelis want civilians to die? Sam, obviously not all Israelis, but enough Israelis to maintain this government believe that Palestinians in Gaza, that their lives have no value, that they're all future enemies, and that they represent a threat to Israel. That is a twisted perspective. Ethan, there were massive demonstrations in Israel, tens of thousands of people in a country that's relatively small, characterizing like the majority of the public as wanting to kill civilians is a little sick. Characterizing like the majority of the public as wanting to kill civilians is a little sick. Why is characterizing it like that a little sick? I think it's because he knows that wanting to kill civilians is a little sick. It's more than a little sick. Characters are like the majority. Well, he just said enough Israelis to maintain the government believe that the Palestinians in Gaza's lives have no matter, that they are all future enemies, and that they represent a threat to Israel. So I mean, you're just characterizing it the way you want. The majority of the public want to kill civilians. You're the one who's just sort of stating that in that way. You could say, so what you're saying, Sam, is that a large enough group of Israelis to maintain the current government, don't care about Palestinians in this way, and, not that they want to kill them, but maybe that they don't necessarily try, or they don't represent or call for actions that would save their lives. That would be a way to push back on what he said and try to color your own position as being more morally rightful or something. But he just goes on and saying, characterizing it like a majority of the public is wanting to kill civilians. Like, he just is so stuck on this, like, exact line. They want civilians to die. They want civilians to die. And, like, yeah, so to speak, in a manner of speaking, yeah, they do. But you don't have to characterize it like that. He's the one who just says it like this. He's the one who says it in the most reductive way and then asks his guest, do you agree with that? And then Sam gives a very descriptive answer. It's like the example I used before of if I say if he asks, is this man evil? And I say, well, he did this evil thing, he does that evil thing, he did this evil thing repeatedly, and this other evil thing. Like, answer my question. Is he evil? And it's like, well, there's no objective answer of if something is evil or not. Really, it's just a description of, like, we can definitely say actions are evil, but they absolutely might be tied to the people who commit the actions, that they are evil. That might be true, but it might not be. But it doesn't really matter. If we want to stop evil, we have to stop evil actions. Right? If someone wants to be evil in their own little way, it doesn't hurt anybody. That's technically okay. Okay, so Ethan says it's a little sick to insinuate that the majority of Israelis, of the public, want to kill civilians. It's a little sick. Sam says, I'm basing this on conversations with Israeli reporters. There does not seem to be in Israel a majority of people who are concerned about the fate of the Palestinians in Gaza. They want hostages. Not all Israelis. I can make analogous assessments of the United States at various times about things that reflected poorly on our national body politic as well. The proof is in the pudding. Ethan says 300,000 protesters in Tel Aviv, 200,000 in the rest of the country. That's 500,000 people out in the street protesting the government of a country that has 6 million or 5 million, 5 or 6 million. Sam says, are you talking about the protest about the judiciary? Ethan says, I'm talking about to release the hostage, which means ceasefire. 500,000, he reiterates. They were calling for a ceasefire or for a release of the hostages? Ethan says, well, what do you mean? What's the point of telling Hamas to release the hostages? They were calling for a ceasefire. Let's look this up and see how many times the Israeli government has said return of the hostages will not end the siege. I'm responding to you saying the majority of Israelis want civilians to die. 500,000 people came to the street for a ceasefire of a country of 5 million. That's 10%. Israel just broke the latest ceasefire, says Sam. Where's the political response from the Israeli people? The idea that Gazans can be held responsible for an election that happened 18 years ago and half the population is under 18. Ethan interrupts. You said the majority of Israelis want civilians to die. He's saying what he said. He asked a question that you could answer. Well, actually, you can't answer it because it's more of a rhetorical question. Where is the political response from the Israeli people over Israel breaking the ceasefire? It's not there. And if it is there, it's coming from people who Ethan's not going to agree with. So Ethan just keeps beating the same drum. He found a little sentence that sounds like it's really immoral to say yes to this, to declare it. He thinks it's going to be like a bang, boom, got your ass, you're bigoted, you're bad, you lost the debate, you just said this. Like, Ethan just is holding on to it because he thinks it's going to be one of those things. And the problem is, it's true. Anyone who's not a Zionist is going to be like, yeah, that's kind of what it seems like. And anyone who is a Zionist is going to be like, no, they're not civilians. They're all terrorists. So, I don't know. The majority of Israelis do not have a problem with what's going on in Gaza. Ethan, I think, unfortunately, that might be true. Okay, so he concedes that his previous point is wrong. The majority of Israelis do not have a problem with what's going on, meaning not that they directly themselves want to kill the civilians, but they want civilians to die. Or are willing to tell anyone who asks, I'm quite happy about what they're doing right now. And what are they doing? They're fucking killing people. They're killing so many people. They don't have to shoot them anymore. They're just starving them. So fucked up. So Ethan says, yeah, that might be true. Everything's got more radical. Unfortunately. Tragically. Everyone's been a lot more radicalized since October 7th. And that's tragic. I think people in Israel are jaded, cynical, and they don't care. It's tragic. I wouldn't say most of them want to kill civilians, though. Okay, man. Well, let's just forget the most of them want to kill civilians line that you made up and go with the shit you just said. They're jaded, cynical, and uncaring. They don't have to be killers themselves. They can just like sit passively by and enjoy the IDF doing it. Wave a little flag. Like, fine. Whether or not they want to kill themselves, I'm sure plenty of them do. They all serve in the fucking military. Everyone there has a gun. And I'm sure plenty of them do want to kill civilians. Sam says, well, I think they don't care. Ethan, and I wouldn't say that there isn't a sizable portion of the Israeli citizens that want a ceasefire. When 500,000 people marched out on the street of a country of 5 million... Again, he's said this like the third time he's said this. Sam is just going to say the same thing. These protests that were happening for the ceasefire in Israel were not anti-Zionist protests. These were just protests of saying, like, just go back to how things were before October 7th. Except, definitely get the Hamas guys. They didn't want to stop they don't want to stop, like, the apartheid. They don't want to allow Palestinians to return to their homes. They're all like, fuck no. Just stop the war in Gaza because it's stupid and expensive and it makes us look really bad. That's all they were protesting. So, yeah, it's a sizable portion, but they're not at all on the side of the Palestinians. So you're also not describing a majority of the country. You're describing 10% of the country. So, not really making a good point about what the majority of Israelis think. Sam says this Pew Research, 39% say Israel's military response against Hamas in Gaza has been about right. 39%. 34% say it's not gone far enough. So that adds up to a very interesting number. 73%. So when Ethan says 73% of Jews make up something, therefore we can just categorize that as, we can just replace it with Jews. So Zionism is Jews because 73% of them are Zionists. Now, Sam pulls up this research poll 73% of Israelis say what the IDF has done in Gaza is good or not far enough. I would categorize all of them as wanting to kill civilians. %73%. That's the number that Ethan cited before for the number of diaspora Jews, the percentage of diaspora Jews who were also Zionists. Okay, interesting. So now can we, because 73% of them are genocidal maniacs, can we say that the majority of the population are maniacs? It's 73%, dude. That's the number of the other thing you wanted. Ethan says, sure. Sam says, that was in May of this past year. I would hope that's changed since then. Ethan, yeah, it's horrible. Sam, 40% last year said that the Israelis should govern the Gaza Strip. I agree. It's tragic what's happened because they've become jaded and become very comfortable with the idea of violence happening. It sucks. It's tragic. I don't know what to do. The situation's so fucked up. It just feels hopeless sometimes. He's in a hopeless position, right? Ethan is trying to be a centrist on Israel-Palestine. And if you're a centrist, you're just on the side of the oppressor. It's an illusion, but you're not going to be well accepted ultimately, I think, in the extreme oppressor side, because you give up too many, you concede too many things. So real Zionists aren't going to want to listen to you because you're not going to be Zionisty enough, because you keep conceding these like wild points where you're like, okay, so you accept this and you accept that, but you're still Zionist. Okay. But he's in a hopeless position of trying to straddle like two sides of this, and it's ridiculous. Sam continues, it certainly does. In the meantime, in this country, we should cease all aid to Israel, stop protecting them in the UN, stop trying to pressure the ICJ and the ICC. The ICJ and the ICC. The ICJ and the ICC. What is this? International Court of Justice. The ICC. Stop trying to pressure the ICJ and the ICC. What's the ICC? The ICC won't let me be International Criminal Court. Okay. So that's what Sam's referring to. And by this country, he means the USA. Should cease all aid to Israel. Stop protecting them in the UN. Stop trying to pressure the ICJ and the ICC. He didn't finish that point because Ethan interrupts to agree. I agree with all those things too. Literally, Ethan goes, it sucks, it's tragic, I don't know what to do, it's fucked up, it's hopeless. And Sam starts actually laying out steps, like legitimate, practical steps to take. Stop funding here. Stop protecting them here. Stop, release the pressure here and here. Like, these are quite specific, practical answers. And you can tell he's not finished talking because he just says pressuring them. Maybe he'd go on to explain a little bit. Maybe these fucking mouth breathers could learn a thing or two. he's in this stupid E3, H3, whatever. What Ethan 3? Is that what it is? It's dog shit. That's what it is. So he cuts Sam off in the middle of like literally what's a perfect response to this. It feels so hopeless sometimes. Because the fact is this is such an avoidable thing. This is such a difficult thing to do that it's actually easier than a lot of people think to not do it. Like, if you just like let aid get into Gaza, people are trying, they want to get aid into Gaza. All you have to do is just stop doing shit. You know? We just have to stop sending money. Stop sending bombs, stop sending weapons, stop sending shit. Just cut it off. Just everyone cut it out. Everyone just fucking take a nap. Everyone have a bender. Everyone get like a bunch of drug of your choice and just take a 5-day weekend. Anyone that's in charge of like a weapon or a bomb or a platoon or anything like that, that would help the situation, right? In this like literal emergency, there'd be a lot more shit that has to keep going on, but Sam is laying out the very first practical steps that must be done towards peace. Ethan, all he gives a fuck about is Sam's going to say a thing and Ethan's going to either agree with it or fight it out. And so once you're 3 items into your list, halfway through a sentence, Ethan will be like, all those things you said are like good sounding things that I don't really know much about. And so he's like, I agree with your things. I agree with all those things too. That's the most we can do as a country to try to stop the war. It's something we should be doing. What do you mean it? He's talking about 3 different things at least. And the third thing had 2 different subjects. So it'd be interesting for him to go into what's the difference between the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court. Just lay out what's the situation, what's going on with those things. That would have been nice. But instead, we get to hear that Ethan agrees with all those things and then refers to it as that and it. And then whines that Kamala Harris would have been more likely to do that. You fucking get out of here. Ooh, we got a commenter. Did I watch The Content Deputy? I did watch it. I didn't watch it over in detail. But yeah, I did see it. I'm kind of catching up on all the iDubbbz Ethan drama. Hassan, Bad Empanada. It's wild. It's a whole wild thing. But yeah, this stream is all about taking it slow, going through every little bit, and hearing everybody out. Right? I'm trying to cut out all the bullshit, cut out all the distractions, distracting language, misspeaking, over talking. Right? We get rid of all that stuff. And this is basically just a truncated, abridged version of their transcript, right? I tried to only preserve the exact wording, of the meaningful words. A lot of ums and stutters are in this transcript. All right, so anyway, Ethan interrupts him to agree and then whine that Kamala Harris would have done it better, or would have done it. Ooh, the Ethan Hassan bait was wild. It pains me that it's 4 hours long, because for me, that's going to take like 16 hours. I'm too slow. I need a job. Yeah, good job. I need a good job. Jobs in the chat. Job. All right. So Sam says, we won't know. We won't know if Kamala Harris would have been more likely to do something. Ethan says, we can't know, and that's the great thing. He then says, this was way more combative than I expected. what do we disagree on? I don't know. Maybe I see too much good in the Israeli population. Maybe I see too much good in the Israeli population. Yeah, that's definitely how he wants to make this conclusion. Sam did mention something like, I have a more jaded view of Israel than you do. Yeah, Sam says, I believe a response was inevitable about Israel, and that's because I have a much more theoretically jaded view of Israel and their agenda. I think Ethan latched onto that and thought, well, that's basically the only thing we disagreed on. Not really. I mean, you definitely disagreed on what the whole, like, what you think was the motivation of Hamas. So they get back into this more. And, it's whether the Israeli, as a whole, a majority of Israelis were or are okay with how Israel is carrying out the genocide. And so Sam is saying it's largely, in my mind, impossible to really fully assess. And he's saying that that's the number of the population. There was a protest last year, 500,000 people who wanted the hostages. Ethan clarifies, ceasefire. Sam says they wanted the hostages back. Ethan says it's not a magic wand. It's a ceasefire. Sam, and they got a ceasefire, and then the Israeli government broke it. Ethan, hold on. Our disagreements is that I'm too optimistic about the Israeli citizenry. So, in the middle of a disagreement, Ethan interrupts and says, no, our disagreement is that I'm too optimistic about the Israeli citizenry. I don't think Ethan ever concedes that point. Or Sam. Sam doesn't concede that point. Ooh, a question says, how did you get this where did you get the transcript? I got it from the YouTube transcript. Every YouTube video, if you go down here, transcript, show transcript, it'll pop up either sometimes on the bottom. Up here. And then I went through it and edited it. I edited it so that it's easier to read. All right. Sam basically refuses to answer, says, I'm not here to adjudicate our differences. Ethan, I'm just trying to summarize our conversation. That's all. Sam, you summarize for you, I'll summarize for me. It is what it is. We can put it into AI and have it summarize it. Ethan says, I'll do that for you, and I'll let you know what it says. All right. Ethan, we'll leave it to the robots. I appreciate you calling in. I value your input on all this. I appreciate the conversation. I think it's good to have conversations like this, like open and honest, even if they're combative. And I think ultimately on the larger points, we agree. But we managed to find things to fight about anyway. And that's what two Jews do, isn't it? Sam says, that happens, that's my understanding. Or it happens, that's my understanding. All right, and that's pretty much the end of it. All right. You're overanalyzing the transcript with a heavy bias against Ethan and completely failing to understand where he's coming from. All right, that's your opinion. I definitely have a big bias against Ethan, but this is why we're presenting his arguments in the most favorable light as possible. And then laying them out. I mean, if you read through this and you get the impression that Ethan is making a good case for something. I don't know what you think it is. What do you think Ethan accomplished here? Because he told some lies. He did a lot of just not listening, inventing like things that Ethan never said or that Sam never said. Like, what was the big one? When he says, this is my favorite response. So Ethan is pressing Sam to tell him the $1,000,000 question. What should they have done? What should Israel have done? Right? And Sam first mentions hitting strategic sites to take out leadership. Ethan interrupts that by saying that leadership was underground. Sam says yes. Sam says, to look at that moment in history, maybe it was. And then Ethan interrupts that by saying, I disagree. Because they had to do something. So, Sam Riddle, what did Ethan disagree with? Because I know I have a heavy bias. You're biased towards Ethan, so maybe you can interpret this and tell me, like, what does Ethan disagree with? Also, the first thing he said was about hitting strategic sites. Ethan definitely doesn't disagree with that, because later on, when Sam asks him back the same question, that's one of the first things Ethan says. He says, I agree, like what you said, do strategic hits to take out leadership, right? And then Sam said, to look at that moment in history, maybe it was. And Ethan says, I disagree. I think Ethan jumped the gun and projected Hassan's perspective onto Sam. But I also think Sam was being cautious to not go against Hassan on anything. You think Sam... All right, are we back? All right, are we back? Is the audio back? I had to restart open broadcast software. So, I hope I am audible. audible. I'd see my green light bouncing and moving. But thanks for letting me know in the chat. Just reading the transcript can remove some emotional context from tone and stuff. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. All right. I don't know. I'm talking now. Green light in. Is the audio back? All right. They should have begun empowering Palestinians in the West Bank. This is my favorite answer. You're saying what Hassan told me, that they should disband their government and lift the borders. So, Ethan was just not listening at all. And I think Sam Riddle is correct that Ethan is projecting Hassan's perspective onto Sam. But in an unreasonable way. It's not a reasonable thing to do. Instead of trying to project someone's views onto another person, you should just learn from the other person. Ethan, he pat himself on the back at the end for how open and honest this conversation is. And how he just wants to have an open, honest, a realistic conversation. And at several times, he does these really disgusting little tricky traps to try to win one over on Sam. And when Sam doesn't give the answer Ethan's expecting, he's like, no, I want to have a realistic conversation. I'm just trying to have an honest conversation, not a fairy tale. Is that how you treat someone when they're just answering your question of what should have happened, and then you get mad at them that their answer is too fantastical? And it's one thing to say that's too fantastical. It's another thing to then accuse your interlocutor of not taking this conversation seriously, of not being open and honest. That's such a shitty thing to do. We've also talked about his just absolute refusal to understand Sam's point that a group that hold an ideology called Zionists, while it might contain 73% of diaspora Jews, contains a much, much larger number of Christians. And his misquoting of the video of Hassan that he plays twice, completely misinterpreting it, completely misquoting it, focusing in on his own misquoted words to try to drive a point home. That's a stupid, stupid point. And it's very stupid to just be like, hi, Sam Seder, let's talk about Israel and Palestine. By the way, this guy that I hate, look what he said. Isn't that disgusting what he said? He was trying to get Sam to be like, yeah, I sure hate that guy. That sucks. That's a shitty, sucky thing that he did. He sucks. That's all Ethan wanted. So he's like, if you don't denounce this, then you must be a bad guy. And Sam just walked him through why it's not anti-Semitic, and Ethan just never conceded. He accused him of hand-waving it, but by the end, Ethan just hand-waved that away, because at the end, he's like, the only thing we disagree with is that I'm a little more charitable towards Israel. I'm too optimistic. So that he forgot about the whole giant disagreement that they have where he's like, well, I disagree. Well, yeah, fine. We're at an impasse. Let's talk about a different topic now. Like, Ethan himself knows that he disagreed with a lot more shit than that. He's not open. He's not honest. It's very clear going through it. Now, yeah, we did cut out all the fluff. So with this, you're losing a lot of the conversation. Of course, this is not meant to be a replacement for watching the debate. This is more of like a recap, and let's go through it and let's analyze things, because sometimes you forget what happened and in what order and who said what. And the point of writing everything down and going through it is to just have a more full understanding of everything that happened. And it's kind of like really getting into the tea, you know? I don't know. This is deeply nerdy. We're pretty far under the iceberg right here. Okay, Sam Riddle says, I think Sam went into the conversation unwilling to give any significant criticism towards Hassan, regardless of what Ethan brought up. What do you think is like Sam's connection with Ethan, or with Hassan? You think Sam and Hassan are like working together or something, and that Sam was trying to? Because from my interpretation, from my perspective, it seems like Sam didn't really want to talk about Hassan because he didn't want to speak for him. And he didn't want to just accept like Ethan's, like, because he knows that they're like rivals, like they're not friends. So he knows that if like Ethan's going to be like, check out what Hassan did, and Hassan said this, he's not going to try to like believe it on face value and get into it. And he'd said multiple times, I don't want to talk about your relationship with Hassan. Right up front in the conversation, he's like, I want to talk about my views on Israel and Palestine and Gaza and Zionism. And Ethan repeatedly brings Hassan into it. One, by just basically asking Hassan. So much time was spent on that little video clip where he's trying to get Sam to either denounce or accept that, you know, based on what Hassan said, him and his father are not worthy of walking a dog. Need alert, nerd alert. Stupid autocorrect. Only wrote that because you said nerdy. Yeah. Nerd alerts are chiming. They're going off. I think Sam has a favorable perspective of Hassan, and therefore will give extreme charitability towards Hassan. And I think Sam's team on Majority Report has very biased perspectives against Ethan. I think Ethan is trying to prod Sam into talking about Hassan. Goes to show that Ethan doesn't really care about the act of genocide, but instead wants to focus on his own personal relationships. Okay, I'm sorry, I misread this as both being from Sam Riddle. Sam Riddle said the first one, and then super manly cool. So we got a little hot and cold. We got a little pro Ethan, we got a little anti Ethan here, both in the chat. Look at this, and we're all having a gentle, calm, nerdy time together, and that's okay. So anyway, yeah. So Sam Riddle thinks the team on Majority Report has kind of worm-tongued Sam, and Sam feels overly protective of Hassan. King of Thunder. I think Hassan is valid during the argument. The only reason Ethan has been pushed to talk to Sam is because Hassan. Majority Report is so biased towards Hassan. The only reason Ethan has been pushed to talk to Sam. Pushed to talk to Sam. No, nobody's making anyone talk to anybody. Ethan, used to go to Sam a lot for help on the how do I like argue politics good front, right? So it's not at all weird for someone to be like, hey, we're in this disagreement, and then Ethan says, well, you are wrong and I'm right, and I know because I'm a Jew. And then you say, well, this other guy's a Jew and he doesn't think like that. So your argument about I'm a Jew, so I'm right, isn't really valid because he's a Jew and he's right. So go talk to him. It makes sense. Hassan did suggest it a few times, but that doesn't mean Ethan had to do this. Sam, and also he didn't suggest them to have an open, like an open air debate. He suggested they talk privately, and Sam even said that I thought you were going to talk in private. I didn't know you wanted me to come on the show. Ethan definitely does not have like he's not approaching this with the intent to learn anything from Sam Seder. He's just trying to like come off as like, oh, I'm the brave, smart comedian guy who can stand up to debates or whatever. If he wanted to actually understand the perspective of an anti-Zionist, he would have met with them over a year ago in person. They would have chatted. They would have exchanged some ideas. He would have asked questions and listened and pondered the answers, considered them. But he doesn't do that on his show. He throws out questions. If you don't give him the answer that he wants, he interrupts and goes on to another question. It's just like entertainment. And for some of us, it's entertaining because it's so fucking tragic. It's like a train wreck. Hassan and Sam both talk about this issue in a serious way, but approach it with respect it deserves. Ethan does the exact opposite. That was super manly cool. I would have to agree with that. Ethan spoke with Sam because it's on. Okay, yeah. Chris Richard. Ethan seems to be talking to people like you would talk to a normie about the situation. It may not be perfectly factual, but it comes from his honest perspective. Eleanor says, that's a wild take. I agree. That is a wild take. It's not about being perfectly factual. It's about having the fact explained to you in crystal clear terms again and again and again and again, and he just refuse to accept it. And then lie about what you said and lie about what you did, and then turn around and do exactly what you accuse other people of doing. You do it right back to them. That's my take on Ethan. It wasn't, I don't know. I don't know any normie who'd appreciate being talked to like that. Normies have feelings too. I'm told. Sometimes normies hurt your feelings. That's because their feelings are hurt first. You know? But hey, whatever, man. We can all disagree. We can all agree. We can all get along in the chat. Everyone's got different ideas. What Hassan's thinking, what Ethan's thinking. None of us are wearing our psychic shoes, I presume. He will still cynically use identity politics to shield himself from consequences. Well, yeah, he does throw around the that's anti-Semitic a lot. And the way he defines anti-Semitism, you basically can't criticize anything that has, some percentage of Jewish people involved, no matter how small of a part of that total group they are. So, I don't know. It's pretty whack. So this was a pretty good stream. I appreciate having some action in the comments. If you're a real crazy, for this in-depth nitpicking, someone call it. What did someone else call it? Overanalyzing. That's a good one. I like that from Sam Riddle. I'm overanalyzing it. If I do this with Hassan versus Ethan, it's going to be like a whole series that'll take me months. Because we go by too slow. But actually, you know what I want to do, though? Is I want to do another round of condensing. I want to condense this even further and basically see if I can compress, all of this down to one sentence, or just kind of, maybe like one sentence summaries of a lot of this to get a briefer look, right? Something you could read through in just a few minutes or a couple minutes. So that might be interesting. All right. Well, yeah, let's call it a night. I've got work tomorrow. It's Monday. It's Monday in the house. So thanks for chatting along, everybody. Thanks, Sam Riddle, Phantom Affinity, Oshos, Match Maltone, King of Thunder, Supermanly Cool, Chris Richards, Alienaire, all of you guys. Thank you for coming around and chatting. And have a good week.